All right, guys, I'm back here today with another video, and today I'm going to discuss who I think are the top 10 players in the NHL right now. I think it's a topic that a lot of people, will either agree with or disagree just because of the fact that I think it's more of an opinion based. I mean, there are some obvious ones, of course, but I think it's more of an opinion based subject for sure, for the most part. Especially when you get past the top five, maybe I think could be more up for debate, but this is just who I think are the top 10 players in the league right now. And I'm not really going to go by guys that have, had a reputation or have been good for a long time. I'm going by maybe the past couple years or so now, just kind of very, very recent history, I would say. So without further ado, guys, let's get into it and let's begin the countdown. Coming in at number 10, we have probably one of the greatest goal scorers of all time in Alex Ovechkin. And I know this might upset some people that he's that far down. But the reason why I put him that far down is because of the fact that even though he's still scoring a lot of goals, I think in terms of best all-around player, he's just that, more of a goal scorer than a good all-around player. And with Ovechkin, I mean, even though he's still scoring a lot of goals, I find he's maybe not scoring in the ways that he used to in a more dynamic fashion. Maybe a lot of them now are coming more from his spot, Ovechkin's office, I guess, so to speak, with them being around that top of the face-off circle. So I think that's pretty prominent that we're seeing a lot of his goals being like that, as opposed to back then where you saw those crazy ones where like he's sliding on his back and he puts it into the net in that game against Phoenix, that infamous game back in 2006. I don't really know if he's that type of Alex Ovechkin anymore, but for me, just because the fact that he does still score a ton of goals and he still has a howitzer for a shot, he can really rip it, obviously. That for me puts him in the top 10 and puts him at 10. And now at number 9, we have another veteran guy that's been around for a while and that's been really great for a while and that has been seeming to be getting better these last few years, is Patrick Kane. And for Kane, I mean, he's just got outstanding hockey sense. He's got great passing ability. I mean, when that guy controls the puck in the zone and he's skating around and dangling and deking, he's one of the best at that, in my opinion. He's got an underrated wrist shot too. He's still got great speed, even though he's getting up there in age too. He's in his 30s now. So for me, Patrick Kane takes home the number 9 spot for sure. At number 8, we have Nikita Kucharov, and this is a guy who was a big steal for Tampa, considering the fact that he was drafted in the second round in 2011. And for me, Kucherov is just a player, again, he almost reminds me of Patrick Kane, but probably not as, or he's probably a little bit better, I should say, actually, than Kane is now, just because of the fact that, in my opinion anyways, because of the fact that he is still younger. I think when Kane was that age, Kucherov's age, I think maybe he might have had more skill than Kucherov. But I think right now I'm going to put Kucherov there. I mean, Kucherov does play on a better team too, so that would give him more points. In my opinion, I think Kucherov is a little bit better right now. He's got, again, much like Patrick Kane, he controls the puck really well. He shoots the puck really well too. He's got a really underrated shot. I think he probably shoots it a little bit better than Patrick Kane, so he's got more goal scoring prowess potential, in my opinion, than Patrick Kane does. But yeah, Kucherov goes number 8 for me. And at number 7, we have Austin Matthews. And I know some people, this might be a really debatable one, a very controversial one. But for me, Matthews is a top 10 player. Like I mentioned in my video about will the Leafs make the playoffs or not, he's not a top 5 player for me, but he easily could be one if he was more consistent. And then say we're having this conversation, let's say maybe a year from now, if Austin Matthews has a really dominant season, he shows that he can be really consistent all the time, he's easily one of the top 5 players in the league for me going forward, for sure, without a doubt. With Matthews, his skill sets are well documented. He skates very well. He's got great size. He protects the puck well. He's got an underrated passing ability. And obviously we know his wrist shot is just off the charts. He's even added the slap shot to his arsenal this past year. He's been using that a lot more, so that's made him even more deadlier of an option for the Toronto Maple Leafs now, and that's going to help him get even more goals than what he was getting. His wrist shot's so quick and so accurate, as we know, and for Austin Matthews, he takes home the number 7 spot for me for sure. Okay, at number 6, we have David Pasternak, who I think is a very great player, obviously. He's got good skating ability, his assets are. and he skates well. He shoots the puck well. I mean, obviously he plays with great players too, with that Bergeron and Marchand being his line mates, of course. But for me, Austin Matthews, skill for skill, I would put him ahead of Pasternak, in my opinion. The reason why I have Pasternak ahead of Matthews on this list is because Pasternak is more consistent. He works harder, I find. He maybe pays more attention to detail as far as defense goes. So I think for me, Pasternak's probably the better all-around player just because he have consistency right now. If Matthews was more consistent, like I said, he's easily in the top 5. He probably is ahead of Pasternak. In fact, I think he is ahead of Pasternak in terms of sheer skill alone. But because Pasternak's details of the game, like I said, are better, that puts him ahead of Austin Matthews for me. And now we're going to get to the top 5 here. And some people might find this next one pretty controversial, but I'm going to have Sidney Crosby taking home number 5. And I know that might sound a little low for him, especially after all he's done in his career. But like I said, this is going by the last couple of years. And in my opinion, as good as Crosby still is, and he continues to be, I don't think he is a top player in the league anymore as far as 1, 2, or 3. He's definitely not in the top 3 in my opinion. I think not only he's declined a little bit in my opinion in terms of maybe his skating ability. Maybe he can't, do some of the things he could maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, even though he's still really great. I don't think, also his decline, and I also think because of the fact, I should say, that we have some really good talent in the league now. I just want to say this, the league is just so talented. We have so many great players to choose from, and that's why a guy as good as Crosby, if he just falls off a tiny bit, he can really drop because of how many great players there are in the NHL. Coming in at number 4, we have Jack Eichel of the Buffalo Sabres. I think Jack Eichel is a premier centerman in this league. I think if he played with better players, he probably could be even higher on this list, in my opinion. But he's really shown me a lot these past few years. He's really carried that Buffalo team. I mean, he's got outstanding speed. And with Eichel, he's got that very unique skating style, too, where most guys that even are fast skaters, they still have to get down and really kind of crouch and go really fast. That's how they build up their speed and their momentum. But with Eichel, he has that upright style, and he's still just as fast as a guy, if not faster than a guy who is a fast skater that is in that traditional crouched mode where you're skating really fast in a traditional manner. But for Eichel, I mean, his wrist shot too, much like Austin Matthews, is really deadly. I mean, he's a guy that just really lights up the league. He scores a ton of goals. He's a potential 50 goal scorer, in my opinion, at least 40. I think for sure. Maybe 50 every year is a bit of a stretch for him, but at least 40. He is one of the best players in the league. I think giving him 4 is very fair. You could even argue him at 3rd, perhaps. But there are a lot of good players, like I said, still in this league, and it's very competitive. And that just goes to show how many good players are in the league, that the fact that a guy like Jack Eichel can be 4th. And when Eichel was first drafted, he was obviously taken behind Connor McDavid, as we all know, in that infamous 2015 NHL entry draft. And for me, his first year was very mediocre. It wasn't anything that looked like a true generational talent or a franchise player. I mean, I think he had 24 goals and 50-something points, which was very good for that age, considering he was only 18 or 19 at the time. And for him to put up those points was still impressive. And then his second year, he had some injuries. 17-18 was a big disappointment for all the Sabres, but I found 18-19 he really took off. And 18-19, 19-20, these past 2 seasons have been lights out for Jack Eichel. And for me, that's really boosted him up the ranks to 4th. And the reason why I don't put him higher is because next up on the list, we have Leon Dreissaitl at number 3. I mean, for me, Dreissaitl... Now, people will make the argument of this. Oh, he plays with Mcdavid. That's why he's so good. I mean, that's why he puts up all these points. I mean, Leon Dreissaitl on his own is a really darn good player, too, and I don't think he gets enough respect. And I think me putting him at 3rd isn't an overrating of Dreissaitl's abilities at all. I mean, you could argue maybe Eichel. I had a hard time with either him or Eichel at 3rd, but I am going to put Dreissaitl there at 3rd. He puts up a ton of points. Maybe Eichel would put up just as many points if he played with a great wingman like Mcdavid, or a great centerman like Mcdavid, I should say. In fact, he probably would. But for me right now, Leon Dreissaitl takes home the number 3 spot. He's so big. He's an underrated skater. He's got underrated speed. in my opinion. He shoots the puck really well. Obviously, he got 50 something goals, I think 51 goals or something last year. So he knows how to score goals. And you can just put anyone on McDavid's line, they say, and oh, they can finish and they can score goals because McDavid's one of the best passers in the world. But in order to score 50 goals, you still have to know how to finish the off plays where if you're playing with Connor McDavid. So Leon Dreissaitl definitely knows how to do that, and that's why he takes home number 3 for me. Coming in at number 2, we have Nathan McKinnon. And I think this is a very fair assessment of McKinnon in terms of putting him at the second spot. And for me, Nathan McKinnon's just such a great player. I mean, he's so dynamic. His hands move as quick as his feet, and that's really saying something considering how fast he is of a skater. I mean, his wrist shot's really good. He's such a water bug out there. He's out there dancing guys. He's such a great passer. He's one of those guys that there are superstars in the league. Then there's superstars like McKinnon, where every time he's on the ice, he just seems like a threat to do something bad to your team and to really hurt them offensively. And that's just the feeling I get every time he's out there. He's always dangerous every shift. Again, he's a guy that works his butt off. And I mean, there's some guys on this list that could be even higher if they worked even harder, like Austin Matthews, for example. He's one of those guys who I think could be dangerous almost every shift if he worked his butt off too. I don't think Matthews, though, is in the same conversation as McKinnon. I don't think he could ever be as good as Nathan McKinnon, in my opinion, just because McKinnon skates a lot faster than Matthews, even though Matthews is a good skater. But McKinnon's one of the best skaters in the league. He's just got such great straight ahead speed, and he's so powerful too. He's a very fast skater and a very powerful skater, and all those assets that he possesses considered, that's why he takes home the number 2 spot for me. Coming in at number 1, you guys guessed it. It's probably an easy one to guess, especially with all the talk about this guy, Connor McDavid, for sure. Still undoubtedly takes home the number 1 spot for me. I know some people might even argue Nathan McKinnon. I don't know how big of a crowd that is that would argue McKinnon over McDavid, but in my opinion, McDavid is still the better player. He's still the better player by a little ways too. I don't know if McKinnon will ever be as good as McDavid. Probably not. I mean, McDavid's he's the fastest player in the world. And he just makes it look so effortless too. I mean, he just makes good skaters, great skaters, look average even. I mean, there was a time in the All-Star game, I believe, when a few years back, him and McKinnon had a race in the fastest skater competition, and McDavid just blew the doors off of him, and that was pretty scary to watch considering how fast Nathan McKinnon is too. But as for Connor McDavid, though, his skill set, I mean, he's the best passer in the world. He's the fastest player in the world. Underrated wrist shot, in my opinion, that he scores more goals than people think. When you think of McDavid, you think of him as more of a playmaker, but I think he has even more goal-scoring potential than what he's shown so far. Playmaking is, though, his bread and butter, in my opinion. But for me, he's just all around the best player in the world, without a doubt. I mean, I don't know. When Crosby first came in the league, I know everyone said, oh, I don't know if there'll ever be a player this good in the league ever again. But for me, Connor McDavid has definitely beat him out. And Crosby was the best player in the league, in my opinion, right up to about maybe after the 16-17 season, maybe starting 17-18, in my opinion, McDavid took over just because of the fact that he started to gain more experience. I think even at the age he is now, I think he's a better player than what Crosby was at McDavid's age now. He skates. The reason why he is because he skates so well, and he does things with his hands that are just mind-boggling at that speed. So that's how good he is. That's why he's number 1 for me. I don't think there's really any denying that. And this is just a top 10. This is my opinion of what I think on these players. And for me, there are some other great players too, but I don't think, in my opinion, they quite make the top 10. So I'm going to kind of go through a few honorable mentions that I made. Again, you guys can have your own opinions on this. For me, it's Artemi Panarin, Sebastian Aho, Elias Pettersson, Brad Marchand, who's become one of the better players in the league. I mean, he's really been impressive these last few years. He just seems to be getting better with age too, so that's a real find for Boston there. Matt Barzell and Evgeny Malk, and I have rounding out the honorable mentions. I think Barzell is a guy who eventually could get into the top 10 pretty soon, in my opinion, because of the way he skates, the way he handles the puck. He reminds me a lot, actually, of Connor McDavid and Nathan McKinnon. He'll never be as skilled as those guys, but just kind of the way he skates, the way he's so good on his edges. He's so shifty, and he's a great playmaker, more primarily a playmaker, especially like Connor McDavid. So for Barzell, watch out for him, especially in the coming years. But that's just my opinion on all of this. You guys let me know what you think in the comment section below. Who do you think are the top 10 players in the league? I'm really interested to know, and if anyone agrees with me on my top 10. But until next time, guys, please like and subscribe and share this video. That really helps me out a lot. And I'll see you guys again soon. And that's it. That's what I think is the top 10. And this could change as soon as next year. Who knows? But that's all, like I said, guys, and I'll see you soon.